Recording this. Hello, and I'm here with JD Ewing, the CEO of COE Distribution. It is the biggest wholesale distributor of furniture in the USA and an amazing company. It is an Inc. 5000 company, and I'll let JD talk about it. I think looking at many successful companies, it's rare to see one that has had a ride like this and has covered so many amazing parts of business. So I'm just going to hand it over to you, and why don't you give us a couple of minutes on how you got from your grandma's business to this amazing entity that you're at.
Sure. Thanks, Stef. Good to be with you. The story originates back in the late 1940s. My grandmother, a single mother of two boys, needed a means to support herself and the boys, and started out in the basement of a bar repairing typewriters and selling accounting supplies, and that's how the business originated. The business grew through the years, through the decades, to include office furniture, machines, all things that you would need to put together an office. My dad stepped into the business to run it in the early 70s and grew that to a 4-location business up through the mid 80s. And the business that I'm running today originated out of that business in 1986. And that the business today is wholesale distribution of office furnishings to the trade. So we only sell to resellers across the US and in the Caribbean. And that was a breakaway from what we were doing, which was retail business of office supplies, machines, and furniture. I grew up in the retail business, and that's what I knew. And the transition for me from retail to wholesale took place during the summer of my 16th birthday, when I had my driver's license and was out in a sports jacket and a tie, making cold calls, trying to sell office supplies and machines to businesses and folks that I had never met before. So I had a lot of doors slammed in the face and a lot of rejection, but also some successes. However, by the end of those 3 months in that summer of 1986, I made a conscious choice that I never ever wanted to do that again, and then transitioned to the wholesale side of the business, and really have never looked back.
It's much cleaner.
Yeah, much cleaner, simpler transactions. You have a quote unquote educated customer base to a certain extent. And so worked part-time in the wholesale business for a few years. And then after my sophomore semester at Penn State University, came back and took over the wholesale business full-time. My dad was going to close that aspect of the business because he was still running the 4 retail stores, and called and said, "Hey, if you want to come back after you finish the semester, you can step in and give it a shot." And after talking to a few folks that convinced me that it made sense, that's what I did. And that was in December of 1989, and took over the business that did about $200,000 in revenue that year. To compress this story in a short amount of time, went from that small business, ran it for the next 17 years. 2006, ended up selling it. We were at about 22 million, sold it in a roll-up, and myself and the entire staff stayed on and worked for the roll-up as a East Coast division, and then ran that division from 22 million up to 36 million, at which point that company ran out of cash and ultimately filed bankruptcy in November of 2009, bought it back out of bankruptcy and reopened the company in January 2010, and went on a ride that was pretty amazing and very educational, but went from $0 in revenue to just under 100 million in 10 years.
Growing
we're on
30% plus every year in an industry that typically grows by single digits, and that's why I think it's so amazing. So we'll talk about all of that, but let's just have a few snippets of, first of all, when you go back to when you were selling a business, what did you learn about selling a business? What are the lessons that you've learned now? If you could look back at your younger self, and this is something I do with a lot of founders, love to hear your perspectives on that.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and it's interesting because it just came up in another conversation less than a week ago, and my immediate response was that I would have been the buyer, not the seller. in hindsight.
Yeah.
But as we all know, hindsight is 20/20, and in the moment, it seemed as if that was the step that was the right one to take, and it was for us. It led to bigger and better things, albeit in a very unique and interesting way. But the education process of that, I think, was very helpful through the selling process. And one of the things that I would do differently, being back in that position, was definitely to have the right advisors around guiding me through that process. I was mid-30s going through it, and simply didn't know what I didn't know, and that was probably the biggest detriment. Yep.
And of course, if you've been around someone who's done 100 transactions, just like nobody understands your business like you do, you can just dodge the bullets, right? And it's a pretty full-on intense experience. So yeah, I would agree with you on that. And I wanted to speak to you now about a very fascinating lesson or set of lessons, which is, as you saw your acquirers destroy the value of the business, what are some of the key mistakes that you saw them do that you would urge CEOs not to do? What are the lessons of what not to do?
And I appreciate that question, because that's essentially what killed the business, and it's specifically the inability of the leaders to not make a decision, or the inability to make a decision. Therefore, they made no decision, and everybody was left to wonder what to do, and therefore six people did six different things, as opposed to being fully aligned and moving the business forward. It just it was fragmented, and there was no consistent message, no consistent path to take the business on a growth path that made sense. Zero efficiencies were gained through the 5 acquisitions that they did. But the biggest mistake was not making a decision. And I think you would agree that if you make a decision and it's wrong, that's still significantly better than just sitting there idling, because then you know it's wrong, and you shift. You move to a different solution. But that was, in my opinion, the biggest mistake that was made, is they simply would not make decisions.
No, absolutely. And then the other thing that I notice is, when you get acquired by a bigger organization, because of the politics and the scale, what you end up is with people who are not focused. And so you end up getting massive inefficiencies in the supply chain. I don't know if that happened to you, like with stocking or basic things with customer service. When you had the smaller team, you could actually do way better. Did that happen with you?
Absolutely, yeah. The smaller teams are more agile. You can shift and move much quicker, and again, mistakes are seen more readily, and they're more visible, so you fix them quicker. And there's, in a smaller organization, particularly when it's fast paced and you're growing, there's very few places to hide. When you start to get bigger, and you don't have the right culture that handles those types of things, people get complacent. Not necessarily knowingly, but it happens. And then there's the bigger problem is those that get complacent or hide knowingly, and they can do it for literally years in an organization of size that. Yeah, exactly. So, this organization at the end of, prior to bankruptcy was not that big, but those things still occurred. And, coming as an entrepreneur and growing a business and running it, and, having a finger on the pulse of practically everything, you see those things, and it's a bit infuriating, and that it's just lost opportunity, and because it's, it's cash out the window. And you're missing opportunities to do the right things within the business.
Absolutely. And then, given, of course, that you knew that business inside out better than anyone, when they went to the bottom and they were almost bankrupt, what made you decide, I'm going to buy this baby back because I can see the opportunities? What was your thought process in terms of the latent assets that you may have had, whether it's clients or that you could salvage, relationships or assets? Why don't you talk us through that?
So it really didn't come to light, or a decision wasn't made to move forward with that opportunity until it was pretty late in the process. The bankruptcy was an prearranged bankruptcy with a stalking horse bidder, and they were a strategic, and everybody was expected to go to work for them, and that was the plan. And near the end of that process, I was able to read through the bankruptcy documentation and understand what that initial stalking horse bid was and what it would take to disrupt that. And it was doable. So
Yeah, so you basically saw a distressed asset in the stock and the brand of the company and all that, and you thought, you know what, I can monetize that value. The brand it can be salvaged. I can increase the customer's experience again and rebrand and rebuild that goodwill that you'd done such a great job building up in the prior 20 years or whatever.
Well said. I couldn't say it any better myself, Stef. So thanks for that.
I'm just trying to double guess it myself.
Yeah. So interesting. Specifically the brand, the name of the company, the acquirer, who was the end result of the 5 acquisitions. We actually took that, and it is our brand today. We use that as our exclusive brand of commercial furnishings in the U.S., which is Office Source. And so we truly rebranded the company and just enhanced what services, products, and capabilities that we had that weren't offered or executed upon, maybe more specifically, the right way to benefit the customers. And that's what we work for every day, is to benefit our customers, our employees, our team members, and therefore our customers benefit because we take care of our team members, and our customers see that, they feel that, and it's reciprocated.
Sure. Yeah, and it's powerful. It's a living organism. And I think one of the very astute things that the best acquirer of businesses do, the best investors in the world, which in effect you were like a distressed asset investor at that stage, is you really managed to assess the value, the intrinsic value of those assets, and it was probably below the book value that they've given them. And then you took it around, and then you executed an amazing plan. So I think we should talk about that next, which is, right, you've bought the business at the bottom, right? You've been very astute, and you make your money when you buy, and I assume you bought it at a pretty good price. And now you've got this amazing trajectory. But when you were there, it would have been very hair raising. And now you're a bit older, right? You've got a business, right? You actually know what you don't know a bit more. And look, what I know of businesses in your world, I'm not a global expert, is that they're very cash hungry, right? So I'm assuming you would have had to go to the banks, and you would have probably had to start doing proper business planning and all that. So why don't you talk to us about that transition? Because that's one that I have to work with a lot with mid-market people in terms of the numbers, things like cash flow forecasting. I mean, I do 3-4 year rolling forecasts, and usually CEOs look at me like I'm on drugs. Why don't you talk them through your planning process and that journey?
Yeah. So for the first, as we brought the assets over and started the new business, for the first time in 20 plus years of being in business, I had to write a business plan and present it to the banks, as you said, because it was going to take cash. Our business lives and dies by inventory, and if we have the inventory, the right inventory in the right locations, we thrive, and you need cash to make that happen. So that was the first unique piece to this restart of the business, is writing a business plan and presenting it to the several banks and making finding out who the best partner was going to be. And we were successful in that, and we were also ultra successful in executing the 3-year plan in less than a year from a revenue standpoint. Wow. We projected to do 9 to 10 million after 3 years, and we hit that in year 1, doubled that in year 2, and we went 30-40% growth the next 8 years.
Amazing.
Charging past 90 million.
There's a great lesson there about setting ambitious targets, because I think you probably found that as well, is that if you set an ambitious target and you can get the senior leadership team behind it, you can achieve pretty amazing things. You may not reach it, but you'll certainly exceed a pedestrian target, right? Is that what you did at your firm? I mean, those are pretty big numbers.
Yeah, I mean, the initial 3-year plan we thought was fairly aggressive, and because the market, this was 2010, so we're still in the throes of the recession, and
Whoa,
we had as an entity and as a company made a lot of people unhappy because we weren't able to fulfill their orders for the previous year because of the former company's cash situation and fractured inventory. So, we were. It was a little apprehensive, a little nerve-wracking as to, hey, are we actually going to be able to make this thing work? Number one, and if so, can we get it to profitability and grow the revenue consistently? And we found out quickly that we absolutely could, and then it just was a wild ride very quickly. And you mentioned senior leadership, and we had 4 of us that were the senior leaders at that point, along with a very small collection of my top folks from the company as it existed before. There were 16 people that started out with this, and we had employed about 80 less than a year prior to that.
Wow.
But very quickly we went back to that 80 plus and went well beyond that as the revenue grew and the company expanded. And but for those first 5 or 6 years on the restart, it was very close to, if not seat of the pants, kind of
Sure.
hey, what are we going to do today, and how are we going to get it done, and do we have enough cash to do it, sort of thing.
Absolutely. I mean,
Because and so there was while there was structure, there was a lack of focus and structure for the longer term view, and longer terms, even 2 years out, we weren't thinking that. We were thinking weeks, months, maybe a quarter out, and what could we do this year? That was the planning. That was the view, and the planning was, well, make sure we have enough inventory this week to survive and fill orders for next week.
Absolutely.
And it was, in that year 7, that a 6-7 timeframe. So this gets us to 2007 or 17, right? 16, 17, that stumbled upon, didn't stumble upon it, but I had Rockefeller Habits and then not touched it. And then for whatever, I had read a book for the first time in a number of years, and it's called Becoming Your Best by Stephen Schallenberger. And then I looked at my bookshelf, and there's this Rockefeller Habits book. So I reread it, because I had read it before, and that's great, but okay, I'm too busy to think about it. So I read it again, and then grabbed Scaling Up, and I'm like, this is the framework that we need to run the business by. Absolutely. And that's what we started to do, and started implementing the Rock Habits, and following the people. We actually migrated to top grading, and who, and utilizing that as the people portion, and the cash piece. Big believers and proponents and followers of the power of one, and elements in that logic, and that
it's all about sensitivities. In case people don't know, it's about the sensitivities to 1% change in price, volume, and all those things that drive understand the impact. But please carry on.
So there's 6 levers, and each lever has a different value in a 1% change, right? And what helped us the most is recognizing, quite frankly, that price is the biggest lever. We were like most companies. We were paralyzed by, if we raise our price, will we lose the business and upset our customers? And that was the way we had kind of operated for 6 years. 6 years. And after reading that and getting complete agreement on the leadership team, we said, look, if we want to continue to grow the business in a way that's going to benefit our employees as well as our customers, this is something we have to do. But we would not have been convinced that was the right path without the Scaling Up and the power of one stories that we heard, and it resonated, and it was perfect timing for us.
They were verified, right? Because the reality is, you would have put your prices up. I'm sure you got your cash flow up, and thank God you did, because that would have funded your growth. Because the problem with businesses like yours typically is that, you know, growth is funded by buying inventory, and then if you get the marginal cash flow that isn't covering the inventory cost, then you can't actually grow organically. So then you have to look at product rationalization. And I'm sure you did that exercise where you got rid of some of the lagging products and you focus on the ones that were really adding the value, right?
Yeah, and that's a work in progress that we're getting better at on a quarterly basis, and that pays dividends as well. So all of those things derive from really having a structure in which to manage the business.
Yeah.
And the value in that, I don't think I realized for the first 6 or 7 years, and understood taking the time to make those decisions and deliberately walk through those planning processes, and the creating the OPSP and really living by the quarterly goals and objectives and creating rocks and all those things. Well, on the outside looking in and hearing those stories sound really hokey and there's no way that works kind of thing. But once you get into it and develop it, if you do it right, you can't imagine running your business any other way.
Yeah. And the amount of focus that it creates in every layer of the management team is unbelievable. But you've got to do it. It's like everything. It's like going to the gym. You know, you get given the program by the gym trainer, but if you don't execute it, you're never going to get the benefits. But if you do it and you do it consistently with rigor, you get the benefits. And so, you know, by doing all those things, you would have been able to get probably the right people. And so probably what happened is that you, as you matured, it became less about you doing all the work all the time and then passing on to the top 5 or 6, as you said. And then I imagine you've been pushing it down the layers now over time, right? Is that what's happening as the business matures and you're sort of creating more transparency in terms of the results and buy-in from the whole of the organization? Is that correct?
Absolutely. It's absolutely correct. And, you know, we have restarted our monthly managers meeting where the executive team meets and does exactly what you just described, following the OPSP and our quarterly goals and making sure that everybody's aligned. So the alignment that's created, which is what you were describing there, of making sure that everybody's on the same page, working towards the same goal, creates so much efficiency and so much focus that all those challenging communication problems and misunderstandings kind of go to the wayside for the most part, and
they're complemented. They're complemented by those meeting rhythms that we've learned about. A very dynamic morning meetings, weekly meetings, monthly meetings that are very different from the typical ones because they're very action oriented rather than reporting, right?
Absolutely. Yep. So
we're in place. The change is that you get a company like yours that makes 30% growth in an industry that is single digit. But let's talk about people, because at the end of the day, organizations are just as good as their people and the energy they bring and coordination. How did your philosophy about people change, and talk about hiring and how you view this percolation of values down in the company?
The focus on developing a culture that allowed us to have open communication, transparency was critical for us to continue the growth path that we were on. And that all fell into place in that 2016, 2017 timeframe as well. It all kind of came together. And really for the last 3 to 4 years, that's been my main focus of developing, maintaining, and cultivating the right culture, which then allows, and a byproduct of the right people is the right culture, and the byproduct of the right culture is the right people. So those things work hand in hand from my view. And that's really where we've made significant investments of continuing education for all of our people, creating company book clubs, which allows us to bring together further alignment and buy-in as to what we want to achieve, and that we're not just in this for company benefit. All the books that we put into the company book clubs, which we do quarterly, have a business focus, but also a personal side where folks can take it outside of the business, take it home, and utilize it in their personal lives as well. So the alignment of everybody understanding that the business is not just business, that it's also personal, and you have to take the entirety of someone into account to get the most benefit for them and from them. Is what we've. Yes. Yeah. And people appreciate it. So it's reciprocated. You get back as much, if not more, as you put in. And we've seen that happen ourselves. It's an amazing thing. And it's very fulfilling. It's heartwarming at times, for sure. And it is a huge benefit to the business, but also to the people and their personal lives, and they feel appreciated. They feel a part of something more than 8 hours of working for someone. They're creating opportunities for themselves, for the clients that they serve, whether those clients are internal or external, and they feel as if they're a part of something bigger than them, and they are able to shape how the company goes forward.
Yeah, and that, and that, to your credit, JD, is the mark of a great leader. It's somebody who has really focused on the why the people come to work every day, which is beyond just the financial reward, and give them a great environment to work in, and to make them feel being part of something bigger. And I think one of the great things that great CEOs do, like yourself, is they take the time to do the little things, just to go and sit down with frontline people, and chat and listen to their things. And I mean, people that will listen to it, they won't appreciate just how hard you worked and that you started from absolutely nothing, which I do know that you did. And so you've got this ability to empathize with people of all roles, because you've done them all, right? You've been the leader, and you've mucked out the trucks, right? And that is without doubt the mark of a great leader, and you possess those skills, plentifully. I just wanted to finish with execution, because execution is a huge thing, and having a streamlined supply chain in your business is extremely important. So why don't you talk about how you've dealt with inefficiencies in your supply chain, how you've laser focused, and maybe if you address them sequentially, or how you did it.
Well, there's the supply chain up until, call it 6 months ago, was relatively stable. And the last 6 months, and in particular the last 3 or 4 months, have been upside down with what's happening globally. So it's a little bit of a different discussion today than it was 4 to 6 months ago. But I think, Stef, I'd like to speak to what's happened to us as a company over the last year, and it really speaks to execution overall. But also ties in some of the things that we've already spoken about, the creating efficiencies in the business, cash and planning, and being laser focused and aligned, because it all ties together with how we were able to navigate through the craziness of 2020 and position ourselves ready to grow again in 2021. So the first 2 months of 2020, we were up 39%. So growing faster than we had typically grown before. Heading towards essentially a solid 9-figure business, and then middle of March, this virus is starting to get a lot of play, and by the end of March, it's sent virtually everybody out of the office, and shut down the U.S. economy. And our business is to furnish offices. And the only way that we get business is when people consume office furnishings. So it created we went from 39% growth to 65% decline in a matter of a month. So that was a bit of a shock, certainly. And we were one of many, right? I'm not trying to look for sympathy here. That's just the reality of it.
The reality. Some of my clients went zero.
Yeah. So one of the things, though, that gave us strength to push through that first challenging month of April was how the business was positioned financially and structurally, and from an execution standpoint. We were in the strongest position we've ever been in financially on April 1, 2020. And that was because we took the effort to start planning for the next recession back in August of 2019. We assumed that by second or third quarter of 2020, business was going to change, growth was going to slow or regress to decline, and we focused on getting the business ready for that. And the huge benefits by being able to execute that goal and initiative, obviously, in hindsight, the best thing we ever did.
Absolutely.
Because of what took place.
Wow.
So we went from down 65% in April. We pivoted with, well, let me step back real quick. Having the confidence to know that we were financially sound because of the steps that we had taken the previous 9 months allowed us to focus on how do we get the business moving forward again, as opposed to standing in fear like a deer in the headlights of, what happens if we're down 65% again next month? What's going to happen to the business? Well, we knew we could survive. We knew we would be able to push through a prolonged slowdown, and knowing also that the government had allowed for and had programs there that we could apply for and be ultra secure as we continued to run the business, also gave us confidence to plan for the future. So I took the initiative to send a company-wide video indicating that we would have no layoffs, we would have no furloughs, there would be no wage reduction, and that message was sent the last week of March. So alignment with how we were going to move forward and attack this challenge to the business, removing the fear from all of our people that, look, they were going to have a job to come to, the work was still going to be there, and there were plenty of other things for them to worry about, but they did not have to worry about how they were going to financially support their families, because we were going to be there and it was covered. And we also gave them 2 weeks off of COVID PTO. So if they were infected or someone in their family that they had to take care of, they could take the time off necessary and wouldn't have to stress over, well, I'm using up all of my vacation, and then what am I going to do when I want to go on vacation? So that was step one. Step two was pivoting to products that were viable and important and necessary for our clients. So return to work safely type products. So sneeze guards, acrylic shields, all the things, hand sanitizers, all the things that anybody going back to the office needed to make their people comfortable to come back to the office. So we developed and put out those products, and we're the first in our channel to do so, and do so on a stocking basis. And that led to our customers being able to depend on us, see us as moving forward and not standing still, and essentially allowed us to grow from a bottom in April. Every month through September, we grew and celebrated our best months in the history of the company ever in August, and then surpassed that in September. And the third quarter of 2020 was our best quarter ever as a company. Amazing. When the industry itself was declining by about 35%, and there were still only 25 to 30% of the people, workers in offices consuming our products. So we know that we took market share throughout the pandemic. We know that we treated our customers right. We know that we treated our employees right, and we know that we continue to do that for the right reasons. The other thing that we did was further investments in technology, in people. So we brought on 3 additional directors over the course of the last 9 months, and strengthened our IT department by doubling the size of the staff, adding talent there, and added a director of supply chain, a director of e-commerce, sales strategy, all of that to really make further investments in the business to benefit the business as well as our clients and our entire employee base.
Amazing.
So that allows us to execute.
Now. As the pickup will come, it doesn't get better than that. You were cashed up, you've done great cash flow planning, everything was right. You had the reserves, and then you just drove hard while everyone else was getting smashed. And then, as you get the pickup, which inevitably will come, you reap the benefits. And it's going to be huge, I think. Well done to you. That is exemplary.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
It's very rare to see a company execute so faultlessly such things, but you get to see if you do the things like the forward planning, 36 months with cash flows. When I worked in investment banks, they had minimum 1 year cash reserves for an entire investment bank. So they said, if we have a pandemic, because this was 15 years ago, they would talk about this, we can still ride it out. And you've done the same with the mid-market company in a tough industry. And the strongest survive. It's Darwinian law. And let's see what happens in the next quarters. I'm sure you'll excel. It's look, time's up. Look, I just wanted to thank you so much for your time and also for giving such amazing insights to us. I look forward to seeing your firm, COE Distributing, succeed more and more. Absolute rock star, JD.
Thanks, Stef. Appreciate the time and the conversation. It was fun.
Yeah, let's catch up soon. Be well, my friend.
All right.
All
Ciao.
right. Ciao.